Well, we all knew this video was going to come eventually, so let's just get right into it. There's not a lot to say about the Short Kings. The Bosmer are sort of the radical centrists of Tamriel in the sense that they just want to grill, for Ifri's sake. To the cannibalistic wood elves, meat is meat, and the grill cares not from where the steaks come from, be it Breton twink or illiterate Nord. The highest form of racism you can encounter in Valenwood is probably just dietary preferences. Maybe some consider Redguard meat being too dry, or the Argonians tasting a bit too fishy. The generally isolationist wood elves do tend to take their own customs very seriously, and any violation of the Green Pact, which is the code many of them live by in protecting trees and other plant life, will get you invited to the cookout, but as a dish rather than a guest. But this applies regardless of who you are, so the Bosmer get an F tier for their egalitarian, culinary view of the other races of Tamriel.
What you want? I got ketamine, meth, MDMA, Adderall, bromo dragonfly, heroin, coke, crack, codeine, oxys, perks, Vikes, PCP.
The cat-like Khajiit are also fairly low on the racism spectrum. The denizens of Elsewhere are inherently open to diversity, they themselves having something like 17 different forms, literally determined by their horoscope, based on the position of the moon at the time of their birth. As such, they tend not to discriminate too hard against others that may be different to them. The other factor for the mercantile catmen is, of course, profit. As the Roman Emperor Vespasian put it, money does not smell, and the Khajiit will always have wares if you have coin, regardless of your race. At the end of the day, they don't care who they sell the Elder Scrolls equivalent of meth to, as long as the customer can pay them. F tier.
Listen, knobhead. If I want to have a swim in my own bin on the hottest day that we've ever had in England, then I'm entitled to do so. If you want to fight about it, be a man, come out and fight about it.
Alright, then go on then.
The other beast race, the lizard-like Argonians, while being even more isolationist than the Wood Elves, are actually pretty chill. Those native to their own home province are generally considered to be the most alien and incomprehensible race by the others, even by other Argonians that grew up outside of Black Marsh. Indeed, the actions of most Argonians are determined by giant sentient spore trees called the Hist. The lizards are highly collectivist, working for the greater good of the Hist, which translates to them just wanting to be left alone. Stay out of my swamp, and we'll be good. During the Oblivion Crisis, the Argonian province of Black Marsh probably suffered the least in all of Tamriel, and the lizards used this opportunity to deport all outsiders from their swamp, as the Angselil party rose to power. These were hardcore lizard nationalists, and they immediately initiated an invasion and genocide of the Dunmer homeland of Morrowind. However, considering that the Dunmer have enslaved the Argonians for generations, this is a valid crash-out, and the justifiable genocide does not affect their ranking as only F-tier racists.
Everybody hates me!
No, little dude, honest.
Hold on, I hate him.
There probably isn't an Elder Scrolls tier list that I could make where I wouldn't put the orcs into F-tier, aside maybe from physical strength or combat prowess. Idea for a future video, maybe? The orcs don't really have the bandwidth to be racist, their time being completely taken up by being tag-teamed by the Bretons and Redguards on an almost annual basis. The Orsimer kind of hate everyone equally, considering them to be absolute pussies, and everyone hates the Orsimer, considering them to be mindless beasts. The orcs are another isolationist race and are very tribal. Many of them live in so-called strongholds and are extremely distrustful of outsiders. This does not stop them from interbreeding with other races though, with some Reachmen claiming to have orc ancestry. Orcs get F tier, being on the receiving end of racism far more than giving it out themselves.
Your mother was a hamster, and your father smelt of elderberries. I fart in your general direction.
Next, we have the Bretons, who are literally the result of race mixing between the human needs of High Rock and the Direni elves, and they are actually proud of their diverse heritage. This automatically places them low on the list. The Bretons, however, are no saints. Their preferred method of discrimination is not racism, but rather classism. Indeed, racial purity is far less important in Breton society than being from a distinguished lineage and having the ability to recount just how inbred your noble bloodline is. There is an exception that is worth pointing out though. Bretons absolutely hate orcs, and anytime the state of Ursinium surpasses the acceptable population threshold of 0, the Bretons and Redguards team up for a punitive expedition into the Hrothgar Mountains to raise whatever pile of rocks the Orsimer managed to erect this time right into the ground. The delusional French cosplayers go into the bottom of C tier since they aren't explicitly racist. Just when you're visiting High Rock, don't ask local carriage drivers their political views unless you're ready to listen to a rant about those damn greenskins for the duration of your journey.
You gotta rotate your race of slud. Now I know it's hard, cause Inwa just rolled off the tongue the way sweat rolls off of Inwa's forehead. But we cannot let that be a crutch, especially when there are so many other fine substitutes.
Following the Bretons are their tag team buddies against the Orcs. The Redguards are sort of like the Sand Slavs of Tamriel in the sense that they don't hate any single other race as much as they hate each other. Almost every race in Elder Scrolls has some sort of internal division, like the Empire having Colovians and Nibnese, but the Redguard rivalry of Crowns versus Forebears is legendary, and it started all the way back when they first arrived on the continent, thousands of years ago. This conflict is so central to their culture that it will no doubt be one of the main quest lines of The Elder Scrolls 6, which will most likely take place in Hammerfell. I'm not even 30 yet, but the younger members of the audience can visit my final resting place when the game eventually comes out and tell the gravestone that, "You were right, Polybes. All these years ago, you were right." Now, their annual obliteration of any attempts at an orc settlement logically places them in the same tier as the Bretons. However, they do edge them out a little bit due to their pre-Tamrielic history. You see, back on their home continent of Yakuta, they famously exterminated an entire race of Mer known as the Left-Hand Elves. But it was just that one time, and it wasn't even a genocide. Actually, it didn't happen, but they deserved it, and we'll do it again. You know what? I bet the Redguard songs about their war crimes go hard as fuck, and I really hope they play them in taverns in The Elder Scrolls 6. C tier.
And what have they ever given us in return?
The aqueduct?
Oh, yeah, they did give us that. That's true, yeah.
And the sanitation.
Yeah, all right, I'll grant you, the aqueduct and sanitation are two things the Romans have done.
And the roads.
Well, yeah, obviously the roads.
Relative to some of the other entries on this list, the Imperials are fairly unracist is the word, I guess. Here's a fun fact to impress the ladies next time. Here's a fun fact to impress the ladies next time you're talking to them at the bar. The Imperials weren't even an official race until the game Redguard. The implication being that the Imperial province was a mix of all the other races living in harmony or something along those lines. Of course, later on, they were fleshed out as their own distinct race and culture, but still, the Empire, in most of its iterations, consists of more than just the central human province of Cyrodiil. At its peak, it covered the entire continent, and the subjugated races were free to live according to their own traditions and customs. The imperial province status was more so a tax obligation rather than a brutal, oppressive rule where the other races were considered second-class citizens. Indeed, the imperial legions, while primarily human, are full of orcs, elves, and, to a lesser degree, even the beast races. Of particular note is the Empire's relationship with the Orsimer, who are often viewed as literal animals by other races, whereas the Imperials came up with the unprecedented concept of treating them as actual sentient beings. Non-Cyrodiilic humans hold positions of power within the imperial bureaucracy, notably Chancellor Okato ruling the Empire in the aftermath of the Oblivion Crisis. All the above should really place the Imperials in F tier, right? Well, that would have been the case if they didn't have the number 1 ranked competitive racist in all of Tamrielic history. The Cyrodiilic Empire has its roots in a slave uprising/genocide against the Aelids, or the Heartland High Elves, that once ruled the province and kept the humans as slaves. One of the demigod entities aiding the Proto-Imperials was one Pelanal Whitestrake. Now, he cannot really be classified as an Imperial, and theories of his origin range from him being a divine being to a time-traveling cyborg, to a combination of all of these, but the point being that he was part of the Cyrodiilic human army. Now, this man's racism is absolutely legendary. He slaughtered so many elves that his default white hair color allegedly turned permanently brown from all the elf blood. Pelanal's body was a machine that turned Mer into Mer that weren't alive anymore, living by the simple principle: if their ears aren't round, put them into the fucking ground. It genuinely got so bad that his own team was a bit scared of him, and the 8 divines themselves had to tell him to chill out. This man was so racist that he went full horseshoe theory and reached the point where he didn't even see race anymore, as he accidentally entered elsewhere and slaughtered like half of the Khajiit population before realizing that elves, in fact, do not have fur. Pelanal did nothing wrong, and he solo carries the generally chill Imperials to the top of C tier.
I hear you're a racist now, Father. What? How did you get interested in that type of thing?
Who said I'm a racist?
Everyone's saying it, Father. Should we all be racist now? Only the farm takes up most of the day, and at night I just like a cup of tea. I might be able to devote myself full-time to the old racism.
Nords are often mistakenly assumed to be the biggest racists of Tamriel, as the majority of Elder Scrolls fans played only Skyrim. That's not even a fake fan accusation, this is completely Bethesda's fault, as many of the younger fans were only born after Oblivion came out. Oh, sorry I didn't play Morrowind, I was too busy not existing yet. Hence, a lot of players' experience with Elder Scrolls racism is probably limited to the Stormcloaks, which just isn't representative of reality in Tamriel. I even got multiple comments on my Civil War video along the lines of, actually, sweetie, the Stormcloaks are not hecking wholesome, and Ulfric Stormcock is literally Austrian painter because he keeps the Dunmer refugees in a less affluent area of Windhelm. You have to understand that this is pretty mild when you consider that we mentioned multiple genocides already, while covering just the C tier. Nords exist in a world where exterminating entire groups of people is just another Tuesday, and the origin story of like half of the current races, and slavery being a very common career path. The perception of Nords as highly racist isn't helped by them being a fair-skinned, blonde, and blue-eyed people, nor does the fact that real-life white supremacists love LARPing as ancient Scandinavians. Dude, I'm literally like the Vikings, except instead of raiding the English coastline, I live in my mom's basement. Nords are by far not the most racist group in Tamriel, the events of Skyrim understandably making them suspicious of outsiders, as they are literally in the middle of a civil war, which some of them view as an actual existential threat. Yes, your average HR department from the year of our Lord 2026 might find the Nords to be problematic and sign them up for cultural sensitivity training, but once again, the Nords live in a completely different world. Their dislike of the elves is easily explained by the fact that a mere 25 years ago, all of Tamriel's collective humanity was involved in a brutal war of survival against the High Elf-led Dominion, whose radically nationalistic government right now is attempting to implement religious restrictions in Skyrim. Even the most common war cry heard across the northern province, that Skyrim belongs to the Nords, could be construed as racist, when in reality it is deeply rooted in Skyrim first being a province of the Cyrodiilic Empire and now having actual elven Gestapo patrolling the streets. And, after all, does Skyrim not belong to the Nords? It's not like anyone else ever lived here, right? But yes, you got me. The Nords did do a little genociding of their own, wiping the snow elves out entirely. But accusations of inhumane treatment of the Falmer do not make sense, as elves aren't human, therefore why would you give them humane treatment? Case closed, B tier.
I'm stronger, I'm smarter, I'm better, I am better!
Now we're moving on to the real heavy hitters, and first we have the Altmer. The entire High Elf society is built on the idea of both racial and cultural supremacy. Their core belief is that they, the Altmer, are the direct and pure descendants of the Aldmer with a D, who they see as divine beings. This is almost like a new ascended form of cosmic racism, where all the other races, even their nigh-feared cousins, are by default seen as lesser. With their lineage being the most important concept to the Somerset Altmer, obviously race mixing is off the table. Indeed, the High Elves' autistic hyperfixation is their bloodline, and cousin marriages ensure genetic purity, as well as the steady increase in the average number of chromosomes across Alinor every generation. The Pocket Guide to the Empire even insists that the elves actually do breed as quickly as humans. They just do very late-stage abortion of an average of 9 out of 10 babies, due to their obsession with purity. Hence, the Altmer are sometimes even described as looking identical to each other, but that is probably just an excuse for how the NPCs look in-game. And I haven't even brought up the fact that the Thalmor and their third Aldmeri Dominion are the most obvious stand-ins for a certain unsuccessful art school applicant and his Third Reich. From their racial purity obsession and supremacist ideology, to religious persecutions and violent suppression of any opposition, not to mention the secret police operating not very secretly across Tamriel, the parallels are clear. But even prior to this, the Altmer were simultaneously somehow both expansionist and isolationist. Indeed, they viewed Tamriel as theirs to conquer, while the Somerset Isles, promised to the Aedrus chosen people 3,000 years ago, are completely closed off to outsiders. The Altmer were also known to practice slavery, though to a lesser extent than some of the other entries on this list, and currently rule over both the Bosmer and the Khajiit as part of their dominion, and, unlike for example the Empire, all positions of power are reserved exclusively for the High Elves, at least from what we can see in Skyrim. The cousin-loving source of all Tamriel's problems goes straight into S tier.
Today's subject: slavery.
And last, but by the Nine Divines not least, are the Dunmer. While the Altmer are arguably more extreme in their spurts of prejudice, The Dark Elves are the kings of being consistently racist throughout their entire history. The Dunmer are, of course, the unpaid internships race. Even the House Tilvani, one of the most magically advanced and powerful groups on the entire continent, practice chattel slavery, particularly targeting the beast races. Again, this is a highly magical society that could probably automate most labor with a thought and a bit of magicka, yet they still make use of involunteers, meaning they literally just do it for the love of the game. Even after pressure from the Empire to abolish slavery, the Dunmer treat the Argonians and Khajiit as nothing better than farming equipment.
They're all disgusting racist like a curse. They're only good when dead. They're vermin, as I said, and worse. They're savages.
Of course, the Dunmer are also the masterminds behind the best racial slur in all of fiction, the Tamrielic N-word, used to describe non-Dark Elves, the word being, of course, Enwa. They say it every morning. They call me Enwa, they call the other Dunmer Enwa, they call themselves Enwa all the time. Enwa this, Enwa that, Enwa please, bitch Enwa, have you lost your mind? Last week I heard a Dunmer say, can an Enwa borrow an ashyam? And my first thought wasn't, by the nine, he said the word, the N-word. It was, no, how is an Enwa gonna borrow a yam? Enwa, is you gonna give it back? I'm telling you, my inside voice didn't talk like that before I played Morrowind. As if it wasn't obvious, the Dunmer, of course, see all other races as below them. And, similar to their inbred Altmer cousins, the Dark Elves' sense of superiority comes from, again, being God's chosen people, except instead of a direct divine Aldmer lineage, the Dunmer were chosen by the three good Daedra, Azura, Boethia, and Mephala. Being blessed by the gods, they of course look down upon the other people of Tamriel. Indeed, as per the recent Vivek files released by the Penetta Socolatus, the word Outlander comes up over 200 times in the letters, clearly indicating the Dark Elves' attitude to the other races. I initially put them above the Altmer due to their institutionalized slavery, but as I'm reading the script right now, I kind of realized that the Dunmer live in some of the most brutal environments, both geographically and socially, and a lot of their faults could definitely not be forgiven, but at least somewhat understood in the context of survival and harsh life. Whereas the Altmer live on actual paradise resort islands and are still absolute pricks. Dunmer still get the easiest S tier of my YouTube career, though now I'm not so sure if it's them or the Altmer that deserve the paper Burger King crown of the CEO of racism. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. So that's the list. You may be wondering why the A tier is empty, that maybe I forgot to put somebody there, but no. The gap between the two GOATs and everyone else is just that big. These two are literally like 2010 Ronaldo and Messi if they were fantasy racists instead of football players, and everyone else is just way below them. Now, again, as to who between the two top dogs takes the number one spot, it kind of comes down to what you personally think is worse: slavery or a genocidal obsession with skull shapes and 23andMe results. The Altmer might take it on a good day, but you just have to admire the sheer dedication of the Dark Elves. Remember to like and subscribe before this channel gets nuked for saying the words racism or racist 26 times in like 20 minutes. I've actually turned down a couple of sponsorships for this video because they'd probably sue me if they saw what is being used to advertise their product. Huge shout out to my real sponsors, my channel members, my Enwas. This video is partially your fault, so let's give them a round of applause. More trash is on the way. I know my 40k video bombed beyond my wildest dreams, but it is my latest autistic obsession, so I'll give it another shot and probably make another one.
I'm not fucking leaving!
Thank you for watching, and as always, until we meet again.